What would you do if you only had 1 year left to live? Would you start a business, get married? Life is short, so why not live life to the fullest? One of the biggest main regrets that people have is that they didn't travel enough. I didn't want to be the person on my deathbed thinking I could have seen more of the world. So that's motivating me to see as much as I can. I recently came back from a trip to Peru with one of my friends. He's Peruvian, and we got to explore his hometown in Lima and visit Cusco to see the natural beauty there. It was a 10-day trip to just immerse myself in the culture. So Peru was one of the places I just crossed off my bucket list. I've been to over 100 places at the young age of 27, and I came to realization that travel wasn't just for me to enjoy and consume. Instead, it was an opportunity for growth. Travel taught me to overcome my limiting beliefs. I saw so many wonderful places that inspired me to create beautiful things, and I met amazing people that taught me more about myself. So in this video, I want to share some of these ideas that my trip to Peru taught me more about life and how to spend it wisely. How often do you set yourself challenges and try to set out to accomplish them? So my friend Ryan and I, we went on a lot of different adventures in Peru, and we set ourselves the challenge to just do it scared. So we tried surfing in the winter ocean against the pounding waves to just try to catch one wave, and we were able to do that. We then rode on these dune buggies up these desert dunes and sandboarded down them, and we went to Rainbow Mountain, which was the highest place that I've ever been onto, and hiked towards the top with very little oxygen. It made me come to the realization that being close to death made me feel so alive. And it reminds me of this one book I've read called Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. So in this book, he talks about the 3 core desires of men, which is adventure, beauty, and battle. So there's this sense of risk-taking and living life to the full that we all crave. We want to be in the wonderful outdoors for this freedom to escape our 9-to-5. And then there's this sense of beauty where we just get this overwhelming sense of joy and peace seeing beautiful things. And there's this sense of battle where we want to stand up for what we believe in and defend others that can't. And I believe to live life to the full is by fulfilling these 3 core desires. So some of my favorite moments of Peru was just being in nature. There was this sense of accomplishment of facing against the fear that I'd be too tired to catch a wave or collapse on the way on top of Rainbow Mountain. But I was able to do it. I was able to do it scared, and it just proved to myself that I am stronger than I thought I was. Life is too short to not spend it taking risks. You don't have to go on an adventure, but you do have to take risks. Some people don't take that risk, so I encourage you to start. Start that business, ask her out, go on that trip. At the end of my life, I don't want to be the person thinking about what if. I want to be the person saying I did. So here's something I don't like to admit about traveling. I don't like sightseeing. It reminds me of going on these little field trips. So when we got to Machu Picchu, my first reaction was just, wow, there's so many people in the way. It was just really hard to get through the ticketing gates to see Machu Picchu itself. But when we got there and finally saw this expansive estate, I was like, oh, it's super pretty here. But there's just so many people talking and chattering and just posing for their Instagram photos. My mind instantly was like, get out of the way. I just want to enjoy Machu Picchu. When we were hiking down from Machu Picchu to this neighboring town, Aguascalientes, that was when I found more peace and joy. I was quite enamored and captivated by the local surroundings because it was this lush green jungle that was just wrapping around us and this winding river that was cutting through these white limestone rocks. And I just felt this overwhelming sense of joy and peace rush over me. And it inspired me to just not take what I have at home for granted. It reminds me of the story from the Washington Post where this master violinist named Joshua Bell conducted this social experiment. What he did was he went to the Washington DC Metro during rush hour to set up a busking station. So his violin case on the ground, brought a special violin to play music to see how many people would stop and just listen to his music. And an hour had passed by as he was playing the best music you could ever listen to, and only 7 of them stopped to listen. So one of the conclusions of this experiment was this: that we are so caught up in our daily commute and grind that we can't even notice or even enjoy something beautiful that's right in front of us. So life is too short to not appreciate the beauty that is around us. I'm so blessed to live in the state of California, where we have beaches, mountains, deserts, and the city. One of my favorite places to visit is Yosemite National Park. I love getting lost in the grandeur and sheer size of the valley. And it was one of the few times in my life that I truly felt that life was short, that if I died, this valley would still be here for the next 1,000 years. So there's this sense of joy and peace I love seeing because I'm seeing these beautiful places. And I encourage you to do the same. That we're oftentimes just so caught up in our daily grind and commute that we forget about these beautiful things right in front of us. So whether big or small, let's take this time to slow down and chase after these beautiful things. How does a small country have such a rich history and culture? I learned a bit by listening in on the tours I was on, but I learned so much more by talking to the locals. I learned that they're such a strong-willed people and that they're extremely proud of their country. They are a small country with a small people, but they built a vast empire that even rivaled the Europeans. So in The Power of Strangers by Joe Keone, he talks about the need of talking with strangers. We need each other to survive. When we conduct business, like going to the grocery store to exchange money for food, we are benefiting each other. The cashier gets money and I get food to not be hungry. So Joe Keone, he conducted this research in Finland, and it was one of the countries that is considered one of the happiest places on earth because it has better social benefits and higher GDP. During his time there, he learned that the stereotypical Finnish person was quite lonely and silent. They liked to be isolated and didn't like talking to people much. So it wasn't until he broke the social norm of reaching out to them when he realized that all they were looking for is just connection. So talking with strangers isn't so much just connecting with someone else, but it's also learning about yourself. You learn that how you see yourself isn't how others see you. So I've learned that I look like one of the Quechua peoples. I have dark skin, small eyes, and a little bit on the shorter side. But I found common ground just by talking with them. The Quechua peoples are some of the poorest people in Peru, but they are the ones that descended from the Incas, who developed the greatest empire in all of South America. This was a battle that I saw the Quechuas were fighting. They were fighting to keep their culture alive against the colonizing Spaniards. And this was a battle that I saw them winning. Their language, history, and culture is so prevalent amongst Peruvian culture. You could see it through the art hung around in the restaurants, in their colorful clothing that they currently still wear, and even in their sodas called Inca Cola. And it just reminds me of my own heritage. Being someone of Vietnamese descent, the Vietnamese were underdogs too, fighting against the colonizing French to keep their culture alive. And now, as someone living a dual identity as an American and a Vietnamese person, I'm thinking to myself, what are the languages that I'm going to teach to my children? What are the traditions that I'm going to share to my future children as well? And all that to say is, what's your legacy? What does your life look like when you're gone from this earth? Meeting these people and seeing how they left their legacy just made me reflect on my own. In 2023, I had the chance to visit Vietnam as a part of a heritage trip. I brought my buddy from college who wasn't Vietnamese whatsoever, but we wanted to explore the country and to see parts of my roots. So when we got there, we flew into Saigon/Ho Chi Minh City, and my extended family picked us up. So I met some of them when they came to visit us in the US, but others I was just meeting for the first time. So they picked us up in this rental van and they drove 3 hours south to this small rural town called Cao Lan. And when we arrived home, I realized this wasn't my first time here. My first time in Vietnam was actually when I was 2 years old. And I don't like to count it because I barely remember anything. But the parts I do remember about this house in particular was this lush green garden in the back with wonderful exotic plants and this small pond with orange koi fish swimming in it. So I later learned that this was the same house that my mom grew up in. And this is the same house that my grandmother raised 6 children in. So my aunt took us around town throughout Cao Lan, and she pointed out this one particular building. It was this bright pink steeple church where my parents apparently got married in. I never knew that. I thought they met in the US and got married here, but they got married in that church. So my aunt later then showed me my parents' wedding photos. I'd never seen them before in my life, and I don't know why my aunt was holding on to them, but I just knew I had to look inside. And upon glance, I didn't even recognize my parents because of how young they looked. But I immediately pulled out my phone and I was snapping photos of each picture in the album because I just wanted to immortalize it for myself. I had the sense that I was staring into my future, that the joy they had for each other was the same joy and love that I was going to receive for me. And then my aunt took us to see my grandparents' graves. It was safeguarded by a neighboring person, and it was just haunting to be there. I had never met my grandparents in my life, and I later learned that I had an aunt that had died young, but I realized this moment was special because I was staring at my past. These were the people that set up my Inca, my dynasty, so that I can have the opportunity to succeed in life. I was one of their branches. And when I was coming home, I realized something harrowing, that I was royalty, that the people set behind me, my grandparents and my parents and my family, they gave me something special, which was opportunity. They gave me opportunity to succeed. I was the first to speak English, first to go to college, and first to start a business. So my family, despite a war, moved to a different country, started something new and special there for me to continue that legacy as well to my future children. So let me ask you this. What's your Inca? What's your dynasty? What's your legacy? Life is short, so spend it wisely. Live life to the fullest, so spend it taking risks, chasing beauty, and leaving a lasting legacy. So thank you so much for watching, and if you're interested in hearing more about these 5 habits that young adults learn too late, you can click here to view it. Thank you again for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one.